Welcome back to the Bentonville Beacon podcast, where we're sharing stories and advice from the leaders and businesses sparking the rise of Bentonville, one of the fastest growing and most dynamic cities in the United States, nestled in the Ozark Mountains of Northwest Arkansas in the heartland of America. I'm your host, James Bell, and I am excited to share this 2-episode bonus series highlighting the third cohort of the Greenhouse Outdoor Recreation Program. We'll call it GORP from here. In these 2 episodes, you'll hear an update from Phil Shellhammer, who is the Director of Business Incubation for the Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the University of Arkansas, and is responsible for GORP. Also, several co-founders from Cohort 3 of GORP will share about their companies and their experiences in the program. Let's get started. Okay, I'd like to introduce you to Brent Robinson, who's founder of Greenway Bike Co. Brent, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
Hey, fantastic. Brent, what would you like our audience to know about you?
I think it's important for people to know that I am an Arkansas native, and very early on, I was a mountain biker. As most Arkansas kids, I think, I reached the point where I needed to get out of Arkansas. So after I graduated from college in '92, I went to a lot of great places, Atlanta, Denver, San Francisco, before I boomeranged back here. The whole time, though, I was a mountain biker. I got my first bike at High Roller Cyclery back in '89. Used to, in between classes, go up on Markham Hill. And everywhere I've gone, I've always ridden a bicycle. But then I moved back here, 2005, started my own business around 2010, and I put everything into that, and I stopped running. I stopped riding. I gained a lot of extra weight that I didn't need. And when the COVID hit, I was 50 pounds heavier than I am now. And for me, that was very unhealthy. With all those other things, I was going to end up on a respirator and not leave the hospital. So I decided I'm going to eat right, and I'm going to start riding my bike. So I went and got these great bikes that I had out in the garage, and I rode them, and I'm huffing and puffing and pushing up hills, and I'm hating every single second of it. I decided there's got to be something I can do here to get riding again. I'm missing out on this. So I started researching e-bikes. And the journey that I took there is how I ended up starting Greenway Bike Company.
That's so cool. Well, I got to tell you, I'm hearing some themes here that sound familiar. Give yourself a break for leaving in '92, because there wasn't a lot to do in '92 in Arkansas at that time. I don't know if the license plate had changed yet, but it was very close to the time period where the license plate changed from the land of opportunity, and the punchline might as well have been there was none, to the natural state. And it absolutely was the natural state. And now those should be combined. It should be the land of milk and honey. Things have really changed. I, too, went to some other places, New Orleans, Nashville, Denver, and Chicago in between there, then to Memphis, and finally to here, and I'm never leaving. And more lately.
Oh, no, it's the same thing. I'm back, so and I'm hooked. I'm hooked.
Yeah, absolutely. We're never leaving. So, give yourself a break for leaving. You came back. You left for the right reasons at the time, and you came back to an incredible place. What's been the most challenging part of building an electric bike company? Or making bikes electric? Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So what we do is we have kits, these conversion kits that we use, and you replace the bottom bracket of the bicycle, and you put a pedal assist motor on it. So now a person can get on their bike that they love, and they can ride it, and they'll have pedal assist as they move along. So cool. That's it. Now, this isn't something that's new. We didn't invent some crazy new technology. These are kits that have been around for 20 years. But the latest technology and other things in this do-it-yourselfer community, it's hard for, to get in there and do it unless you're just a wrench head or something like that. Yeah. So we found a way that we can start to offer those services and present those kits to people in ways that they can utilize them.
Oh, that's very cool. So what's been the hardest part about building your company?
The hardest part has really been, for me, it's just been putting my idea out there.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrifying. The way I started, like I said, I was overweight. I said I needed to do something. I had to change and start getting, healthier again. And So I converted my bike. My son and I, we converted our bikes. And I started feeling better, sleep apnea wasn't bothering me, all these other things. And I started telling everybody about it. Then all of a sudden they were like, well, I got this cool bike in my garage. Can you do that for me? So my son, Maddock, and I, we started converting bikes till somebody said, hey, there's this builders and backers idea accelerator, which is Heartland Forward. And so I got into that. And so seriously, it was terrifying. That was the hardest part, was to get in there and say, hey, I have this idea. What do y'all think? Things went well in that program. So it kind of got my little idea to we should start a company phase. And then that's how, I ended up meeting Phil, was as a result of that and becoming a part of the GORP program.
Yeah, both of those are fantastic programs. For the audience, Builders to Backers is an idea stage accelerator. I have an idea. I don't know where to get started. You join Builders and Backers.
Yep.
And then when you have a outdoor recreation oriented solution, then you come over to GORP, the Greenhouse Outdoor Recreation Program, which, even though it has the University of Arkansas in front of its name, is very much a community facing program that you can join. You get a little cash, you get a lot of help, and they surround you with mentors and programming
Absolutely.
and so on to help you accelerate along to the next phase of the company. So how's GORP going, and what's been the most beneficial part so far?
Well, there's a lot of beneficial parts. One, Phil's amazing. So that's pretty cool. He's connected us with so many different mentors and the people who from the community, from the university all the way up to business people across the NWA. I've got some fantastic mentors. Networking. I mean, I've met so many people from just the introductions and then the cohort, the group of people that, you're also interviewing. I learn so much from them every single day. It's really amazing.
That's cool. Well, we've been interviewing all of your cohort members, and I'm hearing some pretty similar themes here. This is great. I love it. What's the next most important milestone that you need to achieve, and how could our audience help you if that's possible?
Okay. So for me, it's like I've been going through the big challenge, I guess, really kind of going back to, I have so many ideas. A lot of founders have this problem.
Yes.
So I want to do everything from converting somebody's bike to doing workshops, which we got to test in Builders and Backers, to how do you scale this into a franchise, and how do you do manufacturing and all these other things. So, being able to kind of focus on just the first part of that, which is, I have a trailer right now that I'm about to have it wrapped and everything, so I can start doing workshops throughout Northwest Arkansas.
Nice.
And I'm putting up a website so we can start selling kits to do-it-yourselfers. Two things. One, find us. We're at greenwaybikeco.com, and you can buy a kit, or you can sign up for one of the workshops that we'll be doing throughout the summer.
Excellent. I refer to that problem of having all the ideas and not knowing what to do to it as the great founder's idea affliction, because it is present with every founder, and it's how do you get it under control and point it in a direction? It sounds like you're doing that. So congratulations.
Hey, it takes a village, man. It takes a lot of folks to be able to say, cool idea, stop.
Right. Okay. I've got one last question for you. Brent, one of the hallmark questions on this show is what I like to call the #BecauseBentonville question. So could you share with us a moment or a story that really is #BecauseBentonville? It could only happen here, or it describes the essence of this place.
Okay. All right. I'm going to do a compare and contrast.
Okay.
When I lived in California, I lived in San Francisco, and there was some great mountain biking there. Okay. Amazing. But if you wanted to leave the office and take off and go do that, I'd have to ride across a ferry boat and get to Marin County and do all this other stuff, right? Okay. I guess it was about 10 years ago when I was at Collective Bias. Amy Callahan started the company. We used to go bring our bikes, and then at lunchtime, just take off and go over to Slaughter Pen, get to ride the trails a little bit, come back a little bit sweaty, but go right back to work. You could only do that in Bentonville.
Absolutely. And wow, that's just grown, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
I talked to some folks who, live in Bella Vista, and sometimes will ride to work, which includes they have to go through the Slaughter Pen trail system, will ride from Bella Vista to Bentonville and basically do it on trails, which is pretty amazing.
Well, can I put my Fayetteville plug in there?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, so my office is downtown Fayetteville on Dixon Street, and I live over by Gully Park.
Yeah.
And with the trail systems that we have now, when I first started doing it, I was out of shape. 3 miles killed me.
Yeah.
Now I'll do 9 miles in, and then I'll pedal assist my way in so I don't sweat. And then on the way back, I'll go around the trails, the single tracks on Lake Fayetteville, and then go back to my house. So I'll end up doing 22 miles in a day.
Yeah.
It's good exercise.
Yeah. I mean, this whole area has really blown up with mountain biking,
amazing.
whether it's Bentonville, Fayetteville, or anywhere in between. And now, with the Greenway. Nice tie to your company, by the way.
Can you believe that domain was
amazing.
available?
You have the ability to really go from, Bella Vista to Bentonville, all the way down to Fayetteville and all points in between, Rogers, Springdale, and so on. It makes for an amazing community that we live in. So, hey, thanks, Brent. Thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
Let me introduce you to Alex Huesing, who is the co-founder of CloudPad. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be on.
Yeah, you bet. Well, what should the Bentonville Beacon audience know about you?
Well, I don't think I have a particularly unique story. I moved to Bentonville about a year ago for Walmart, and I had already known that I would love it because I was lucky enough to have visited a couple times for business beforehand. Okay. But since moving out here, I've just been fascinated by the community and how much there is to learn, specifically in the retail space. So I had moved here from San Francisco, where surrounded by all these different tech startups and all this culture of, finding the next big thing. It felt like you were the center of the world, right? And then you move out here and you realize there is this completely unknown center for retail. It's like the best kept secret, in my opinion. And I feel like I've just been learning so much since. But in terms of what Alex is interested in, I think the most important thing in the last 2 years that I found that really made me happy was rock climbing. I can still remember the first time I went climbing. It was the scariest thing I've ever done in my entire life. Like, the fear and adrenaline just hooked me instantly. And I just have never really been able to think about any other hobby or any other pursuit since. And so working at Walmart, seeing retail, and then having this passion for climbing, the dream is to build something that, can make climbing a part of my life every day. I started pretty late, so I'm probably not going to be one of those athletes who pushes the sport forward myself. But with what we're trying to build, I think we can find tools and find ways to push the sport further and be a part of that progress. So that's what I'm most excited about. And it's been really cool in Bentonville finding all these different support networks to help make this vision a reality.
That's cool. I mean, well, you mentioned starting late. I mean, really, it sounds like potentially you're making climbing more accessible for folks as well by creating tools to make it better and easier.
Yeah.
So, you can help more folks just like you and me get started.
Yeah.
We'll see if I get started climbing.
Well, I think I can take you outside sometime. There's some really beautiful spots out here. And
there are.
I can't guarantee you'll be hooked, but I can guarantee you'll be scared. So,
hey, I like it.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Can you tell us then about CloudPad? What's the problem that you're solving? Who are you solving it for? And how are you doing it? Or give us an idea about what's going on.
Yeah. So I think a good way to start answering that question is by just giving a little bit of background on, the different disciplines of climbing.
Yeah.
Which, just to plug, was recently an Olympic sport. So hopefully this is becoming more common knowledge. But in general, you can break up climbing into basically two general types. There's sport climbing, where people are using a rope to get up a really big wall. So they're tied into that, and maybe they're using a partner or even a machine. But the idea is if they fall, the rope is going to catch them somehow. The other main discipline is bouldering. And so in that, you're climbing these short but typically very challenging routes where if you fall, you have some sort of soft pad underneath you to help catch you and, you know, prevent injury that way. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to build a product to help boulders get outside. Right now, basically the portable mattress that you lug around with you outside if you want to go bouldering is called a crash pad, and it follows the exact same design since it was first made commercially available in 1992, which is dense, like dual density foam pad that you lug around on your back, and they're actually quite expensive. So mine is 3 feet by 4 feet and only about 8 inches thick, and it runs for $200. So we want to build a smarter boulder pad because we know that there's a better way to do it. Our hope is that by making a product that's both safer and more affordable, you can prevent injuries. You can get more people to be excited about going outside and, you know, going on these incredible outdoor experiences that just it adds so much focus and clarity to your life. So that's our vision. And that's the problem we're trying to solve and the customer that we're trying to reach. Excellent.
That's very cool. You made me think about the boulder that just appeared one day behind the 8th Street Market.
Oh yeah. Well,
have you been climbing that?
It's so funny you mentioned that. I am. And the really funny thing about that is, you know, a really important part of starting a company is doing intense customer research. Uh-huh. And I was so certain, like, no one is crazy enough to just buy a boulder pad without at least going to the gym first. And they put that boulder up, and one of my coworkers immediately went and bought a boulder pad, and he's like, I'm outside. Do you want to join me during lunch?
That's great.
And I've never met someone who just jumped headfirst into it like my buddy did. I was so proud of him. So I'm very excited about that boulder. It is, if anyone has a chance to stop by, I'd highly recommend it. And you don't need a boulder pad to climb it. He went a little bit overboard there. You can save the money.
Excellent. Well, that's one of those things that I call #because Bentonville. Yeah. We'll ask for a story around that later. But yeah, that just made me think about the 8th Street Market boulder all of a sudden, which is basically right behind our office. So I guess I need to go climb it.
Yeah. It's, you know, every journey begins with a step. So
yeah,
it could be yours.
Right. Or a fall.
Yeah.
Talk to me about GORP. How did y'all get into the program? Why did you join it? What's going on with it?
Yeah. Well, I think when you start a company, there's so much uncertainty and there's so many challenges. And so GORP is a phenomenal program run through the University of Arkansas that just it gives you a good structure, first of all, for approaching and learning some of the challenges that are inevitable along the way of starting a company. But really, the most important thing it provides is just this social support network of peers, meaning other startup founders, of experts, you know, like the director, Phil, mentors from the university who've been helpful to me, and even in some instances, pairing us with students who have helped us build this vision. And frankly, the energy they bring is as important as anything. So the GORP's a phenomenal program, but it's so hard to communicate what it's done for our company just by listing off, you know, the resources and the lessons that they provide. The social support, it just turnkeys, like, it just, I was blown away at how quickly things started moving because of the community that they've built. And it's really exciting to be a part of that community now.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yep. Again, you know, as I said with somebody else earlier, there's a fly in the studio.
Yeah. Yeah.
It joined us from outside. It's okay.
Wants to be part of the community.
That's right. You know, you're listing off some things that I keep hearing over and over, which is the support. And that's not just the mentors, it's also your peers, because it is really hard to start a company and you want folks walking alongside you, but who also open up their network.
Yeah. I mean, I guess Elliot will be on here, and we had a lesson end 30 minutes early, and then me and him were sitting together in the greenhouse an hour late just talking, and I felt like I learned so much about how to think about brand formation and company formation from him. It's really incredible, like what you can learn from your peers, and the dialogue is just important. You know, so much of what you're trying to build, you need that social guidance and direction. It's almost like Socratic dialogue is how you get there with a lot of these startups. So,
sure. What's been the most challenging part about building a company?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is just the uncertainty and unpredictability that you deal with every step of the way. You know, we don't know if our final product is going to be successful. We don't know if exactly how we're going to reach customers, or, you know, a year from now, how exactly we're going to be financing our business model. Managing that uncertainty is very difficult and challenging. But, you know, I think the positive from it all is that, like, the way you overcome that uncertainty is by just keeping and maintaining a strong focus on your mission and your core values, being persistent, and then also making sure that you have a strong team supporting you. I think the great thing about CloudPad is those lessons are probably things that I've really learned from rock climbing, right? Like, that's how you approach a crazy problem, like climbing a boulder that is a sheer rock face that you can't really imagine, you know, where the first step is. It feels like a lot of the lessons have translated. There's a whole lot of symbiosis between rock climbing and starting a company. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, this issue of clarity is one I hear from a lot of folks starting companies, and one I've suffered through myself in starting companies. What advice do you offer to others who are struggling with that question?
Well, I think that the trick is, or rather the first step is, you need to find a mentor, a source of support. You know, for me, that was GORP for starting a company. And I can still remember, you know, my first climbing mentor. What I think a lot of people don't tell you is, in order to find that first mentor, though, you need to put in work as well. So you're not going to get there alone, but the way you earn that trust and build that credibility with a mentor to make that a productive relationship, you need to be willing to take that first step. And it's challenging, and it certainly takes courage. But it's important to know you don't have to get all the way by yourself. You just need to take those first few steps, and more often than not, you'll find someone to help you get to where you're trying to go. Cool.
Well, that is sage advice. I have one last question.
All right.
And this question is what I like to call a hashtag because Bentonville question. Tell me a story or a moment that happened where, you know, you look at it and you think that could only happen here in Bentonville, or it describes the essence of this place.
Yeah. One of the really cool things about Bentonville is it's such a small place with so much going on. And when I first moved here, one of my coworkers reached out to me because he'd known I was interested in trying to get more involved in the climbing community out here and hadn't really found my pack yet. And he sent me a really interesting article about a local Northwest Arkansas entrepreneur who started up a rock climbing company that made ropes. So I'm sure you know him, Pedro from Lacaita.
Absolutely.
And Pedro, I found him on LinkedIn. I connected with him, and like a week later, we were at Climb Bentonville together. He's a phenomenal climber, and he really was one of the people who just made the transition for me so easy coming here. And, you know, 2.5 months, 3 months of climbing later, I don't know if you've been in a room with Pedro for a while, but it's hard to not have ideas bouncing off each other. And I mean, in so many ways, it feels like CloudPad started itself. Like, it was an inevitability if you're in a room talking to him, and you know, everything we're building, it would only be possible with him. And at the same time, like, when you're in Bentonville, if you're interested in climbing and, you know, you're startup minded, you're gonna bump into Pedro. So that's my only Bentonville story, and I can't believe how quickly it happened, and yet, it happened in no time. So.
Yeah, you bet. Well, we've had Pedro on the show. His energy is infectious. He is a guy, like you said, you hang around long enough, not very long, actually, and you're going to start having some amazing ideas flowing. But yeah, it's amazing to me how this community looks out for people immediately when they get here or before they get here, and start connecting them to their tribe. So to speak, so that they can really live their best lives. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been fantastic. I appreciate you sharing your story and look forward to seeing what you do.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Let me introduce you to Marley Blonsky. Marley is the co-founder of All Bodies on Bikes, and she is a true trailblazer of the body size inclusion movement in the cycling world. Marley, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Well, glad to have you here.
Yeah.
Will you share with the Bentonville Beacon audience, what should they know about Marley Blonsky?
Oh, goodness. There's a lot. So I'm new-ish to Bentonville. I moved here about a year ago from Seattle. And like you said, I'm the co-founder of All Bodies on Bikes, which is, we just filed for our nonprofit status, which is really exciting. But basically, it's a movement to make cycling more inclusive to people of all sizes and shapes. So I myself am actually a professional cyclist, which feels crazy to say because I've never won a race. Like, I don't get paid to go fast, but I get paid for inclusion work. Mm-hmm. So giving talks, leading rides, doing advocacy work. And that is basically what led me to Bentonville. I was in Seattle and working in corporate America for about 12 years, and COVID hit. I still had my job, but we'll get to this, I'm sure, but there was a film that was made about me called All Bodies on Bikes. Oh, wow. And when that got released in, I guess it was March of 2021, it was kind of a rocket ship of opportunities and publicity. And I realized I could make this my full-time gig. So after some logistics and figuring out where in the world I wanted to move, I landed here. And now this really is like my full-time everything.
That is cool. Well, I have to know, how did the film come about?
Oh, gosh. So we were doing body size inclusion work. So giving workshops and talks, and because it's a growing topic of concern. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of folks realize that cycling is this amazing activity for health, for mental health, for community building, for transportation. But it leaves a lot of people out. Mm-hmm. If you don't fit into the Lycra and look like you could go race and be really fast, you might not feel like you're a cyclist.
I do find they're a little bit small for me.
I mean, me too. And so we'll get into that. That's kind of,
good.
That's why I'm on this podcast, actually, and why I'm in the GORP program. But basically, me and my co-founder, we were going to go to Washington, D.C. to give our presentation, and at the League of American Bicyclists National Summit, COVID hit. We ended up doing our presentation virtually, and a filmmaker heard our story and said, "This is really compelling. We want to tell this story." And so he got funding from Shimano, and that was kind of the beginning of it.
Wow, that is so cool. See, lots of great things came out of the pandemic.
Definitely,
in very unexpected ways. I love it. Before we talk about All Bodies on Bikes, let's talk about that transition from Seattle to Bentonville. I mean, how did all that come about, and how did you end up here?
Yeah, so I was introduced to Bentonville because of the UCI Cyclocross World mm-hmm. Championship that was here. So as part of my work with Shimano and Cannondale and a couple other brands, I had the opportunity to come down here, and I was connected with the hashtag Because Bentonville influencer campaign. Yes. So I came down here. The cyclocross, or the bike race, was in Fayetteville, but because I was doing influencer stuff for Bentonville, mm-hmm. it was like, no, I should stay in Bentonville and check out the trails and check out the momentary. And I came here and I was like, I love it here. And I'd already been looking to move out of Seattle, but I was looking at places like Portland and Kansas City and places that have a strong bike culture, but a different kind of bike culture. And when I came here, honestly, Arkansas was not on my radar. But once I got here, I also heard about the Life Works Here grant. And I was like, well, I might as well throw my hat in the ring. I can work remotely. I mm-hmm. work for myself. And then kind of the rest is history. While I was here in January, I was riding around downtown Bentonville, kind of getting the lay of the land and going to Onyx and all the cool things. And there was a house with a for rent sign. And I had no idea if it was going to be in my budget, but I was like, I'm just going to call and see. And turns out it's the best little house. And I live in downtown Bentonville. And yeah, I think once my landlord figures out that he's sitting on a gold mine, it might change, but fingers crossed, I've got a garden, I'm taking care of it, and really proud of my little rental.
Well, that's fantastic. It's funny hearing somebody come here from Seattle and say, I don't know if I can afford, oh, never mind, I can.
Yeah. Thankfully I am still able to afford it. But things are changing rapidly.
That's cool. Well, talk about All Bodies on Bikes.
Yeah. So like I said, it's a nonprofit, but the reason why I'm in the GORP program is because one of the needs that we continually heard over and over again through this community is we need clothing. Obviously you can ride bikes wearing anything. I rode bikes today wearing this dress with a pair of shorts on underneath. You can ride in jeans, but those bike clothes have a specific purpose, and you're going to be a lot more comfortable in purpose-built clothing, whether it's for mountain biking or a long gravel ride or a road ride. Having that padded short and the jersey, especially down here in the Arkansas heat and the humidity, but they don't make it for people in bigger bodies. They usually tops out around size 3X, which if you've ever put on biking clothes is more like an XL in regular clothing. So I had this idea and kind of this need that my community was telling me is like, we need bigger clothing for the outdoors. So that's what I started with. Did a lot of customer discovery, and that really kind of confirmed the challenges that I anticipated, not having clothes, not having rain jackets, not having technical gear. So mountain bike, like knee pads or elbow pads or chest protectors, basically anything you need to go outside. If you live in a bigger body, it doesn't really exist. You can get sweatpants, you can get t-shirts, but technical gear just doesn't exist. So I applied to the GORP program to make bigger clothing outdoor clothing for bigger bodies. But as I got down the process, thinking about design and sourcing and manufacturing, my idea shifted a little bit. Okay. Or I should say a lot. And I still think that technical clothing needs to happen. I just don't want to be the one to do it. I think the economic realities of starting an apparel business in 2023 are incredibly challenging. As we were going down the line with our company, we were looking at making it in the USA, ethically sourcing fabric and recycled materials, and just the price point got to somewhere where I didn't feel comfortable asking my community to pay that. So kind of went back to the drawing board. So what I'm doing now with it is consulting, because there's a lot of brands who are already making great clothing, Pearl Izumi, Rafa, Gore, so many brands. If we can convince them of the business case to make bigger clothing, I think that is where we're going to have the biggest impact, because we're not trying to reproduce supply chains and, start up manufacturing from the ground up. So that's one element of it, is kind of consulting work. And then the other side of it is I want to be like the REI for plus size people in the outdoors. Because one of the things that we heard through customer discovery is it's more than just cycling. It's climbing, it's skiing, it's snow gear, it's boating. You think about all the different items you need to go outside comfortably, whether it's a life jacket or a climbing harness or even ski boots. Yeah. They need to be adapted for people in bigger bodies. And there's a lot of companies out there doing it, but it can take a long time to find that. So basically, I want to create a technology solution that aggregates all the different brands together who have this offering. So that way, if you're looking for a pair of snow pants, you don't have to go to 10 different websites to find the pair that's in stock that fits you. You go to our website. I have no idea what it's going to be called yet. I'm a big fan of transparency. I think it's really helpful just to be honest about where you're at. Yeah. And I definitely am going to need help with this. Aggregate it all together so that way you can one-stop shopping. But we're not actually holding any of the inventory. So I just got to figure out how that actually works in real life.
Yeah. So I guess where to find outdoor stuff for bigger bodies.com is probably too lengthy.
good SEO though.
Oh yeah, totally.
No, it's funny. I do have a name that I'm sitting on and I love it. It's called Cavell Outdoors. So I'm Jewish.
Okay.
And as I was thinking about a name for the clothing company, was kind of playing around with different Yiddish words, and everything kind of kept coming back to, curvy chic or curvy cycle. And I didn't want that. I wanted something that stood out on its own. And so came up with the name Cavell, which means to feel delighted. And that's really what I want to evoke from people when they find the site or they put on clothes or find that there is stuff for them. I want them to feel delight. And then just, not limiting ourselves to the bike world, even though that's like my primary passion. There's so much opportunity. You look at basically any sport, kayaking, football pads, anything. Like bigger bodies need bigger stuff. And that industry really isn't being served right now at all.
That's a lovely name. You should roll with it.
I'm working on it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Very cool. Well, how is GORP helping you out?
It has taught me so much. So my degree is in gender studies. I'm one of those awesome millennials who was told, major in what you want to, and the rest will just come. It kind of works like that, but not really. And so I have almost no business acumen or knowledge whatsoever, especially when it comes to the startup world. And so when I first met with Phil, I was so intimidated because, even words like customer discovery and minimum viable product or just all these things, I had never encountered them. I worked in corporate America, but I did sustainability. I can calculate your carbon footprint all day long. But doing a startup, I have no idea. So GORP has really kind of given me the framework, the language, the tools, but I think most importantly, the resources. Because, I just told you I switched my business model 8 weeks into the program.
Sure.
But all those steps that we had gone through, from customer discovery up through, what is the size of the market? What does this look like? Those still apply. So I think it really just got me off on a good foot to kind of go down this path and figure out if it's a viable market opportunity. And who knows, I might get down the path with this Cavell Outdoors as the aggregator and say, let's tweak it a little bit more. But GORP has really opened those doors and shown me there's a whole community of folks who are in this world, and it's a really collaborative community.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's very cool. I love hearing this story. A lot of people get into accelerators. I've seen a number of people get into accelerators and be afraid in the short window that they have to actually pivot and make a legitimate hard pivot.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid they're going to fail. They're afraid they're going to be seen as failures. But you've made the pivot. You're like, no, this doesn't work. So we're going to do this.
Well, I tend to be pretty impulsive. And I follow my gut. And about 4 weeks into it, as I was going through customer discovery and thinking about design and, going to trade shows, it just didn't feel right. I didn't feel like I could really create a quality product, clothing that I could stand behind and sell to people. And so it was like, I'm not quitting GORP. Like, this is such a valuable resource and I'm learning so much, but like this idea still has merit. Let's pivot. I think it also helped that one of my cohort team members, Eliot, also pivoted. So just seeing, what was possible and the support that was there. I love the GORP program because there's not an expectation that, you're ready to go to market or you're ready to sell things. So there's not a lot of pressure and it's more supportive guidance. Let's make this the best it can possibly be so you don't screw up.
Yeah, I do love that about GORP. Some accelerators push you too fast when if only you had a couple of more weeks.
Exactly.
You could be vastly better and have a sustainable company.
Yeah. And it's funny because, Mike with Uncle Company or Uncle Corp, they're so far down the path, like farther than the rest of us. We joke that it's like, they're in grad school and we're all in kindergarten, but it's cool to see them like going to pitch competitions and winning and like seeing what the next steps could look like for us. But also just still be in that space together and learning and like making the same mistakes together. So.
Yeah, well, that's really neat because it is a struggle for, I've run acceleration programs, and it is a struggle for many accelerators to handle a range of where folks are on the path, but addressed appropriately, like it is here, they're able to help the kindergartners, as you put them.
Nothing wrong with it. We all start somewhere, right?
Yeah. I'll guarantee you the grad students are learning from you as well.
I hope so.
So yeah, it's a really good, I think it's a good format because it helps you see the path. And these folks out here are probably also talking with you about their war stories. Hey, yeah, I had exactly that problem, or here's what I did. Totally.
And there's the alumni from the previous cohorts. You know, it really is a community. And it's like, these are folks that I probably wouldn't have encountered otherwise. But we're all working within the outdoor space in Bentonville. And so now, you know, I took my friend group. It's double the size it was.
That's awesome. Okay, got a couple of questions left for you. Speaking of Bentonville, I'd love it if you could tell me a story. This is a hashtag because Bentonville story. So it's a moment in time or a full-blown story that happened, and you look at it and you go, gee, that could only happen here. Or it describes the essence of Bentonville.
Oh, goodness. Every day here is like that. You know, I go for a ride and I run into people and see them, but I'm thinking specifically about my nephew came down for spring break. He's 7 and he loves bikes, everything about bikes. I'd like to think that's thanks to my influence, but you never know. And so he came down, spent a couple days with me. And in the span of 2 days, I think we hit up every single thing that's kid friendly in Bentonville. Nice. You know, we went to the museum, we went to Climb, we went to the Momentary, we went to Crystal Bridges, all via bicycle. And like, yes, you can do that in other cities. But can you leave your bike unlocked outside and not worry about it? No. Can I see friends and meet people everywhere? They're like, oh, you're Marley from All Bodies on Bikes. Actually, yesterday, I was just sitting at the Meteor and I told this woman, I was like, hey, I really like your top. It's cute. And she goes, oh, you're famous. And like, that's very much like a because Bentonville thing where you're just hanging out, having coffee or beers, and people are coming here specifically to ride bikes. And because they've seen my posts on Instagram, they plan their visits here and then they run into me. Like, that's very much a because Bentonville thing. Like living in Seattle, it wouldn't have happened like that.
Very cool. Yeah, wow, that's a great story. I love it. Next time, make sure to also take him to the Museum of Native American History.
Yes.
That is really cool.
I really want to go there.
Yeah.
I ride my bike by there sometimes and I really, really want to go.
Well, it's free, just like
everything
Crystal
else.
Bridges and everything else, which is amazing.
It's so mind-blowing to me. Like, I just spent a week in DC, and a lot of stuff there is free, but you have to have a ticket. I mean, some things around here you have to have a ticket for, but it's just such a bigger production. Like here, you can literally just walk in and check out the museum, you know, see world-renowned artists. Like the resources and the trails and even Kohler, you know, it's become like my local go-to place to ride. But friends come in from out of town and they're just blown away. And I go back to, you know, my very first bike ride in Bentonville. We went down through Kohler past Airship. And I took a photo in front of that Paradise Found sign at the barn. And I was just like, this is heaven on earth. Like, I'm not a religious person, but I've found my place. And like, it continues to amaze.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
It really is.
Very cool. So, okay, last question. What would you say to folks who haven't experienced Bentonville yet, or they're ready for a change of scenery, or they want to start an outdoor rec company?
Yeah, come check it out. You know, park your car, get on a bicycle, and that's the way you're really going to experience Bentonville. You know, the people, the sights, the smells, the sounds. Give yourself 4 or 5 days here, and just take it in. You know, walk around the square, talk to people. Especially if you're an entrepreneur, check out what the University of Arkansas has. Check out all the resources that the Waltons are providing to our community, and don't be afraid to ask. There's such a wealth of resources around here that I think a lot of us don't even take advantage of. It's gonna sound like a not related, but I promise you it is. I checked out a telescope from the library the other day. Did you know that they have a library of things?
I did not know you could check out a telescope. I knew they had a library of things.
Yeah, so they've got multiple telescopes, cool. Fishing poles, GoPros, like everything. And I feel like that's just a good metaphor for everything that's here in Bentonville. It's like, what's your interest? Okay, there's something that's there to help incubate it and grow it. And honestly, there's probably an opportunity there to like do something even bigger with it.
That is a great way to close this out. What's your interest? Come on.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marley.
Thank you.
Let me introduce you to Eliot Jackson, the founder of Reggy. Eliot is a professional cyclist, and he's also a racer and a brand ambassador for Santa Cruz, which I really appreciate as a Santa Cruz Tallboy owner. Now I need to be the rider of that Tallboy. He's also executive chairman of Grow Cycling Foundation and much more. Eliot, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's super cool to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you here. So what should our audience know about Eliot Jackson?
Yeah, I think the bike has been this like huge part of my life for forever. Grew up in Oklahoma, actually. Started racing downhill bikes when I was maybe 18. And then I spent 10 years on the World Cup circuit, traveling around, was top 10 at one point in the world, which was really cool. And then kind of transitioned out of that into all of the other interests I have. So you mentioned Grow Cycling, the bike giving me so much. I wanted to kind of say, what does it look like to give back, to allow this thing to affect more people in the world? And entrepreneurship's been a big part of me and my family. So it's cool to kind of get to do that through the bike in so many ways.
Oh, that is so cool. Now I feel really embarrassed by admitting that I don't ride as much as I should with my bike. That sounds amazing. I mean, how did you get into downhill? How did you get into racing to begin with?
I mean, it's so serendipitous. Also raced motocross. Okay. And so my brother and I, we raced motocross, but then also had, we would ride dirt jumps on our BMX bikes. Never raced BMX. But on those dirt jumps, I just happened to meet a mountain biker, and he convinced me to go to Whistler in Canada, which is kind of one of the meccas of downhill mountain biking. Ride up in a ski lift, and then you ride down only downhill, which is amazing. And I fell in love with it. And he, again, happened to just be into racing, showed me some World Cup videos. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to travel the world. I want to go to these really cool places. Most of the races are in Europe. There was some in Australia, South Africa, and just getting to compete and kind of pursue that was really, really cool.
Man, that's living the dream right there.
Well, I laugh now because like people would always say that, you're like, oh, professional athlete, you're living the dream or whatever. And I'd be like, it's pretty difficult. and now I do commentary for Red Bull. And so I get to go to those like kind of same races and just talk about how my friends should be doing way better. And if I was on the track, I would be not making that mistake or whatever. So it's been cool to kind of do that transition as well, where I was behind the tape doing the racing and now doing the commentary as the expert, kind of explaining it.
Yeah, and I don't even mean to make light of it at all when I'm like, oh, living the life, because I know there's a lot of hard work and so on. And I'm going to just make a guess here. I'll tell you, in my past, in my professional sales life, I traveled all over the place. At one point, I was flying 150,000 miles a year, which is really crazy. And people are like, oh, that's so cool. You travel so much. You get to see all these places. No. I don't get to see these places at all.
I see the airport.
Right.
I see the hotel room. I see the venue. And then I see the airport.
I've actually done the thing where I had to open up the curtains to my hotel room to see where I was. One time I opened them and went, oh, the Space Needle, and I went back to sleep.
Yeah, well, the one that happens a lot is like you forget which hotel room you're in. You go to the hotel room that you were in last week or whatever.
Oh, been there. Exactly. Well, hey, talk to us about Reggy. What's your company all about?
Yeah, so having all of this experience on the bike, getting to talk to so many people, I kind of had this experience where it's like no matter where you go, you're kind of wondering what you can do. So I also spend time in California, and I come here, and even though I'm, as engrossed in the sport as I could possibly be, I don't know what's going on in Bentonville. And that's kind of, you have to regain context no matter where you go. And so I was kind of thinking like, how do you fix that, right? How do you provide this place where the discovery is super easy for the cyclists, and then also kind of providing this platform for the entrepreneurs in cycling, the race organizers, the coaches, the guides and things like that to be able to connect. And so that's kind of where the idea came from, is like, how do you bridge these gaps and give tools to the entrepreneurs of cycling, and then discovery for the people who are riding the bike.
Oh, that's so cool. So the company then somehow you found GORP. Right. So
totally.
Will you talk about that? Talk about GORP, how it has helped you sort of shape your business and really helped you?
Yeah, I mean, like the path to GORP was so fascinating. Just discovering Bentonville in general. Came here, met Gary Vernon, who works for the Walton Family Foundation on kind of like doing everything bike, and then got introduced to this ecosystem. And to me, like the intersection between entrepreneurship and cycling and really the outdoors is Bentonville is unique in the world. Like I've been so many places and there's nowhere that those two things intersect as much as they do here. Met Phil at the GORP program and Sarah Goforth, and like we started talking, and it's been actually, just like a couple of almost a year, over a year until like I could carve out a section of time where I could just be here full time. But it's been amazing.
That's cool. Somehow I knew Gary Vernon's name was going to come up in this
of course.
conversation, especially back when you started talking about bikes and BMX. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So some of these things sound familiar.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's cool, like with the GORP program, just having that cohort model. And so everyone's doing a different company, right? It's like not all cycling, there's climbing, there's apparel, there's all of these different things. And so I think for me, just being able to focus on it full time, we all of us are, still working and things like that. So that's been really cool to just be able to say, let's focus on it full time, get these resources, get the mentorship, get the camaraderie and all of the things that come with that. It's a really cool program of just how to be an entrepreneur, and also just the learning and like true like acceleration of whatever you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's so cool. I mean, we were talking about before this show about how a lot of accelerators teach you to pitch. They teach you to raise money, but they don't teach you how to operationalize your company.
Once you raise all this money and like do all these meetings, like the actual thing is running the business.
Yeah. So I love that this is really focused more so there. Share your experiences about Bentonville and how that has helped you build your business or get moving along with your business.
Yeah, I mean, again, like the path to Bentonville is just super interesting. So one of the companies I'm an ambassador for is Rafa, and Tom and Stuart, got involved with that company, made the push into mountain biking. And so coming here as well, like I think there's just so many ties for me with Grow Cycling here, with Rafa here, with Gary, with entrepreneurship. But really, like, it is just so amazing, the accessibility of opportunities. And I think from the outside, people kind of see it as like maybe sometimes as a one-trick pony, right? It's like, oh, it's the place of Walmart. But when you come here, it doesn't feel like that, right? Like there is a whole startup ecosystem. You have like 1 million cups where that's not the conversation every time, right? Like it's people supporting other people. And I think that again is unique to have this kind of small town vibe, like community vibe, but then with the opportunity of a city, or big city, like when I think of LA or whatever. So yeah.
You're right. It does have that vibe. And it is really cool that, it's not all about Walmart, right? Which is really cool that you can have Fortune 1 here
totally
with all the power and influence that Fortune 1 should have.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, it's about mountain biking and culture and arts and mobility, whether it's bikes through drones and coming soon.
Totally.
There could be, who knows, flying cars and air taxis.
Yeah, for sure.
And just so much more in this whole ecosystem of companies and in supply chain, logistics, retail tech. I could make a laundry list, corporate enablement technologies. There's so much more going on.
Right.
Tell me, as we start wrapping up, what I'd like to call a hashtag because Bentonville story. That's something that could only happen here, or it's a moment in time where you go, gee, that describes the essence of Bentonville.
Yeah. I mean, the two that come to mind, there was one weekend last year where I came for the Shift conference, which is held by People for Bikes. So it's kind of one of the biggest bike conferences for the industry. All the executives come and kind of get together, do talks and kind of network. So I was here for that with Grow Cycling. same weekend, I think the weekend before, there was the cyclocross world championships. And then on that same weekend, there was outer bike. And so one of my best friends, downhill racer, Bernard Kerr, and I was just like, oh, he was like, hey, are you in Bentonville? I was like, yeah, are you in Bentonville? And he's from the UK. And so he was here for outer bike. And I was like, in what world are we in the same town in Arkansas, like for two totally different reasons? I think that is like only enabled by Bentonville. And the other one, I like mentioned that access. And I think it's been really cool how open everyone is. And so like, you know, getting to know Tom and Stuart, like, and I don't know them well, but like in what world, right, do I get to meet these people because I ride a bike? And that they're just like, yeah, cool. I think that those two things are just crazy. Like, it's so insane.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned shift and and cyclocross and other things that were going on. We had, you know, at one point last year, and I think in about a 6-week period, like 10 bike events and conferences and so on. It was all bikes all the time for a minute. It was pretty amazing. And, you know, we mentioned bikes a moment ago. That's not the only thing outdoors going on here either, right?
Totally.
Short of the ocean or snow, and I can imagine circumstances under which we can change that.
I know.
There's everything.
Yeah.
You know, climbing's probably the next big thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that it is, again, like from the outside, I think whatever your entry point is, it can kind of seem like that is the main focus.
Yeah.
But right, like you said, there's climbing, you know, there's the river, there's kayaking, there's all of these different things. And so I think that idea of just like the idea of Bentonville as being the best place in the world to live, and like what does that look like, has just been like fascinating for me to see how that's like actually coming to fruition, and being able to spend a little bit more time here. So I've been here for a couple months now, and it's super cool. So I think that it's a unique place. I haven't been anywhere like it.
Very cool. Well, let's get to the last question. This is sort of the free for all. What did I not ask you that I should have asked?
I guess you did a good job, but maybe for me, I talked about Reggy, but one of the things that has happened now that I've been able to work on it full time, is just that I've made a bit of a pivot. And so that I talked about that idea of like kind of discovery. And so I've kind of pivoted more into the consumer side of that, and making an app for all of those people to discover the experiences. I think the organizers and the entrepreneurs have a lot more channels than the riders do. And so I'm exploring the kind of this idea of building an app that allows you to race anywhere, race right outside your door, and really get other kind of professional athletes and influencers involved to say, here are the best routes in Bentonville, go right outside your door, compete on them, set a time, have that like World Cup experience where you get points and stuff like that, compete against your friend and build community. And I think that is a cool thing, and kind of along the lines of accessibility where you don't have to travel and pay a bunch of money and things like that. So yeah, it's been cool. Entrepreneurship.
I love it.
It's interesting.
It's very cool. I was hoping you'd talk about the pivot, and now you got me thinking. I mean, wouldn't it be neat if I could just go out my door, hop on, I don't know, pick a trail, maybe not one that will get me upside down right now, maybe an easier one, but maybe some professional riders have ridden that trail, and it would be neat to be able to benchmark myself. Yeah. And then as I get better, continue benchmarking and see how that goes. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think that along that discoverability, like when you go to a new place, it would be nice to just say like, here's this world famous gravel rider that lives in Bentonville. Here's their 6 favorite routes. And now I can compete against people who are my skill level, and kind of improve my time, see how I'm doing, all of these things without having to get time off work and all that stuff. I can just do it on my own time. So
that's so neat. I love it. Well, hey, thanks, Eliot. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, that's a wrap on this bonus episode. If you enjoyed it, check out the other half of the GORP bonus series. Thank you to Phil Shellhammer and the founders who were able to join the show to share about their companies and their experiences, and for giving us a peek into some of the newest innovations in outdoor recreation. And thank you to you, our Bentonville Beacon audience. You know, without you, this show would not be possible. If you will, take a moment, share this episode with your friends and colleagues, and keep coming back for more to discover Bentonville's leaders and their businesses, and more about Bentonville and Northwest Arkansas, where you get more of what you want and less of what you don't. Check out all of our episodes at bentonvillebeacon.com and on most podcast players, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And of course, hit that subscribe button. Thanks. We'll see you next time.